Veteran stonecutter, B Sharp, and world's biggest mama's boy, Principal Skinner used to be one of the more well-rounded characters in Springfield. But over the years, his stories have become dominated by his constant bootlicking and the cruelty of his beloved smother Agnes, chipping away at any progression he's made piece by piece. But back in the Simpsons' golden age, Skinner provided plenty of iconic moments, as well as acting as a complex foe, and sometimes even friend to bad boy Bart. So whatever happened to the no-nonsense Spanky? And how did he become such a pathetic wet blanket? And that's what we're gonna find out today. Skinner was once a man who commanded respect, and sure, he's an uptight square, but one who was certainly committed to the love of the education system, always searching for funds to improve the school, even if it meant cramming classrooms full of criminals.
This was a great way to make extra money renting out our cloakrooms to the overcrowded prison system.
This was a man who certainly had a silly, adorable, naive edge, yet still had some boundaries which made him stand his ground. He refused to be intimidated by a suspiciously old elementary student, and even held his own against Fat Tony and his cronies.
Get out! Okay, you don't have to yell.
And Bartholomew, the teacher tormentor, even came to appreciate Skinner's law and order when he became a hall monitor. And who could forget Skinner's truly intimidating pursuit of Bart in season 5's The Boy Who Knew Too Much. This was a time when Bart could face consequences, and Skinner was there to issue them.
3 months detention. Wait a minute, Bart. Make that 4 months detention.
And his strict and uptight nature was entwined with a fantastic origin story. He was a veteran of the Vietnam War, so keeping order was embedded in his DNA from years and years of service.
Just like they forgot about me in that tiger cage for 18 agonizing months.
He'd done well in life and was able to stand his ground even after facing some truly haunting ordeals.
That elephant ate my entire platoon.
His PTSD provided him with an utterly sympathetic and tactile backstory that balanced out an otherwise typical angry principal stereotype, thus making him far more likable than the likes of Mr. Strickland, Mr. Rooney, Mr. Vernon, and of course the more overtly stereotypical character of Miss Trunchbull. I mean, just listen to this emotional breakdown over the school intercom.
Johnny!
We couldn't help but feel for the guy, which made it all the more satisfying when he gave the likes of the blue-haired lawyer a can of whoop-ass when threatened with a lawsuit. He was finally becoming the guy we would really root for. So when he was replaced by Ned Flanders as principal, we felt glad when he developed a heartfelt friendship with Bart. He gained his respect, all while proving just how important he was to The Simpsons. And even though his dream of writing Billy and the Clonosaurus was ruthlessly torn apart by a poo,
first you think of an idea that has already been done, and then you give it a title that nobody could possibly like.
Seymour was still a man of many interests that pushed him further than the school gates and into the cast of Springfield. His military know-how earned him a spot on Homer's vigilante squad, he refereed the Historical Reenactment Society, and was of course the head of the Springfield Birdwatchers. And it does have to be said that by this point, Skinner was quite literally the butt of many jokes. But the early years did also show a great deal of reverence to the devoted principal, who was by this point well integrated amongst the main players in Springfield. He was a member of Springfield's mentor group, and when the Simpsons spin-off showcase saw Chief Wiggum relocate to New Orleans, who better to have by his side than Skinny Boy?
I've always been a small-time hustler.
I know. That's precisely why I hired you as my leg man, Skinny Boy.
But over 20 years later, Skinner's presence in the show has dramatically reduced, gradually losing his hard-earned respect through increasingly degrading acts, such as making out with groundskeeper Willie during a school assembly. What led to this heartbreaking downfall? The fall of the principal. The first major sign of The Simpsons mishandling Skinner came in season 9's hugely controversial The Principal and the Pauper. Here, Seymour is outed as an imposter whose real identity was former teenage tearaway Armin Tamzarian, and this massive change to such a major character's backstory prompted outrage from fans and even Skinner's voice actor Harry Shearer. And although the episode is largely disregarded as non-canon when viewed in isolation, it is still a pretty fascinating character study. It could have opened up the questions of why he was so much of a square, why he was so hard on tearaways when he was one himself, and could it reason why he could resonate with Bart. However, amongst these questions, the episode did something far better than anyone could ever anticipate. It revealed the true extent of Skinner's popularity. As beloved by fans as he was the townspeople, The Principal and the Pauper was more of a flawed tribute to Skinner rather than an unforgivable mistake. And seeing as it's been almost completely ignored ever since its release, it's hard to argue that this was the point where his character had really changed. Instead, I feel that Skinner's decline came several years later, following one of his last ever great storylines. On the surface, Skinner seemed to be married to his job, but he was really hiding a loneliness that even sexy Patty couldn't fill. But eventually he kindled a romance with none other than Edna Krabappel, and their scandalous affair soon evolved into a long-term relationship, providing Skinner with a sorely needed social life. Edna even unleashed Seymour's wild side and bravely challenged his extremely dysfunctional relationship with his mother.
From now on, I'm my own man.
I have waited to hear that for so long.
Skinner finally got some self-respect. He stood up for their relationship and even got to the point where he followed Edna to Orlando to propose to her. However, this grand, progressive, cathartic, and romantic gesture was soon undermined in just a few minutes in season 15's My Big Fat Geek Wedding, where Seymour revealed that he didn't want to get married. So fearing he would never change, Edna called off the wedding and rejected any attempts to reconcile, and she even ran into the arms of Comic Book Guy. And it wasn't enough that he once dated Skinner's mother, but he was now willing to get jiggy with his former fiancée. And so after an embarrassing fight dressed as Catwoman, Skinner returned to a life of ridicule with Agnes and his shame closet.
At least I went down like a man.
You look like a Malaysian transsexual.
And with Skinner and Edna's relationship finally ending, it also ended any chance of him leaving home and running his own life, fully marking his regression after years and years of character development. How has Skinner changed? Skinner's peculiar relationship with his overbearing mother has been one of the show's oldest running gags, fearing her ever-watchful eye in a fitting homage to Psycho.
There's Mother now, watching me.
And he's never hidden his frustrations with her, shown via his treatment of a dummy during a self-help seminar. But he could never bring himself to move out of their family home, even when she ground him for talking to the sugar man.
Thanks a lot, Simpson. Now I'm grounded.
Or hide his car keys for talking to a woman on the phone. And following his failed engagement with Edna, Skinner became far more reliant on his mother. It's often joked that despite having his own room like a big boy, Skinner sometimes shares a bed with Agnes.
You can push your crib into Mommy's room tonight.
It's not a crib, it's a cot.
Their public displays of affection were so uncomfortable that it made Marge reconsider her growing bond with Bart, fearful of ending up just like them. And through Marge, we've got another taste of Agnes's unusual bond with her son, constantly berating him for being a failure when competing on the same curling team in the Winter Olympics.
You're a disgrace to frozen water.
And sure, sometimes she can be a doting mother, but are a few kind moments enough to combat decades and decades of controlling his life. For instance, she'll go and tell him to grow up, but then go and gate crash on his date. And when Skinner left home after discovering she'd withheld his college acceptance letter, all it took was a simple apology for him to immediately forgive a life-changing decision that she made on his behalf. And while Skinner certainly regressed into a glorified man-child at home, he also began acting rather strangely at school too. Edna was initially drawn to his wide-eyed innocence, but this was gradually chipped away over the years and he was coming across as just plain pathetic, even locking lips with an ice mummy just to make her jealous. And in season 17, his ignorant comments about women's intelligence resulted in the school being divided between the sexes, and he was temporarily demoted.
All I meant was, from what I've seen, boys are better at math, science, the real subjects.
And his attitudes here are absolutely ridiculous and don't really correspond with his experiences before, especially as he's been mostly surrounded by strong, intelligent women like Lisa, Allison, Edna, and hell, even Agnes. And perhaps what's even stranger is how little of a fight he put up against Flanders and Reverend Lovejoy, who blackmailed him into teaching creationism, later supporting the ban on evolution too. Far different from the guy who stood up to the mafia, now buckling down to a guy who plays with trains in his basement and the other who screams over a nice curtain. He basically lost all enthusiasm for the school, interfering with the children's education and even letting Otto believe he killed a bus full of kids. And he's paid so little that he even jumped at the chance to work for Nelson's small bicycle business, with little regard to his self-dignity. And by this point, Bart Simpson's pranks on him have made him a real laughingstock, even having him convinced that he murdered Agnes without any fear of retaliation. Yet he still relied on his rival to help him score a date with music teacher Miss Juniper. But we never really got the chance to be invested in this relationship because of her guest star status, meaning that their romance was sure to be short-lived, therefore doomed to fail. Plus, we'd been thrown all over the shop with Edna and his relationship, therefore I had personally given up on him. We saw his next failed romantic endeavour in season 27 when he competed against Bart for substitute teacher Carol Barrera, which is slightly weird. And even when Bart relented, Agnes was on hand to put a swift end to Skinner's happiness. Has Seymour got his groove back? Now personally, I think the last 3 seasons of The Simpsons has kind of been its renaissance. There has been a massive improvement of the quality since season 30, and one of the characters I feel like is finally starting to get its resurgence is Seymour Skinner, with one of my personal favourite episodes of the modern era giving the principal a sorely needed backbone. As well as his mother, the other constant in Skinner's life is Gary Chalmers, and Skinner had always been a suck up to his boss and would happily take on every single insult Chalmers threw at him. But season 32's The Road to Cincinnati saw Skinner finally stand up to his bully boss, marking what I hope as a real turning point for his character. Throughout this episode, he constantly uses his experience and intelligence to get them out of difficult situations, like enlisting the help of the veterans to save Chalmers from a biker gang, and after they get in trouble with the law, Skinner charms the judge into letting them go free, as well as getting them a lovely cozy bed and breakfast when they lost their wallets. Despite making every effort to please his boss and overcome several setbacks, he finally found his voice when he discovered that Chalmers had planned on replacing him with another principal.
Fire me, you bald-pated son of a bitch!
The episode provided Skinner with his most prominent character arc in several years, and beginning as a desperate suck-up before venting his anger to Chalmers in a mighty B&B brawl, Chalmers came to admire Seymour's unwavering loyalty and a friendship finally formed.
Oh, God help me. I respect Seymour Skinner. In fact, I like him.
But this was just the first step in a season that tried to restore Skinner's endearing qualities that had sadly been lacking for quite some time now. So when A Christmas Movie was filmed in Springfield over the summer, a jaded big city executive fell for salt of the earth Skinner. Ultimately, it didn't work out between them, but I'm glad at least Skinner is given more screen time and isn't treated like a complete pathetic joke anymore. And hopefully we do get some more great Skinner-centric episodes down the road that remind us just how complex the principal was in the earlier seasons. But one thing that's for certain is that no matter how many times he's knocked down, he just doesn't know when to quit. Are there any other Simpsons characters that you'd like to see a deep dive of next? And if so, what element do you think I should look into? Thank you so much for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.